When I was young, I used to lie on the grass at night and stare up at the stars and think about how many there were. And I remember asking myself, somebody must be out there, right? With all those stars, with all those planets, it would be the most extraordinary coincidence in the history of the universe if life only happened once here, on this one tiny rock. It would be almost insulting to the size of the cosmos. So I started thinking as a physicist, not as a dreamer, as a physicist. And I want to share with you what I found, because what I found is one of the most uncomfortable and most beautiful results I've ever encountered in all of science. Here's the problem, a simple one, and it has nothing to do with rockets or alien psychology or whether they breathe oxygen. It has to do with something far more fundamental. It has to do with energy. Let me set it up for you. Suppose a civilization exists somewhere out there. Doesn't matter where. Could be in our galaxy, could be in another one entirely. They're intelligent. They're curious. They've figured out physics because physics is physics. It doesn't change from one star system to another. The laws are the same everywhere. That's what's beautiful about them. Now this civilization starts to grow. They figure out agriculture. Then they figure out combustion. Then electricity. Then nuclear power. Just like us. And as they get smarter, they use more energy. Each breakthrough in understanding opens up new possibilities, and each new possibility requires more power to run. This is not a coincidence. This is a deep pattern. Here's a number I want you to remember. On Earth right now, all of human civilization uses roughly 2 times 10 to the 13th watts of power. That's about 20 terawatts. Write that down somewhere in your head. 20 terawatts. That's us. Right now, today, running everything, every city, every airplane, every data center, every light left on in an empty room. 20 terawatts. Now the sun puts out about 3.8 times 10 to the 26th watts. I want you to feel the size of that number. The sun emits every single second more energy than all of human civilization has ever used across the entirety of its history. And almost all of it, an almost incomprehensible fraction of it, just flies off into empty space and hits nothing. So the question a physicist asks is this: what happens when a civilization gets good enough at engineering to actually capture that energy? What happens when they stop wasting it? The Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev asked exactly this question in 1964. He proposed a simple classification scheme. A Type 1 civilization uses all the energy available on its home planet. A Type 2 civilization uses all the energy of its home star. A Type 3 civilization uses all the energy of its home galaxy. Beautiful, clean classification. The universe hands you energy in these natural units: planet, star, galaxy, and you can rank civilizations by how efficiently they tap into them. And here's where it gets interesting. Because physics doesn't just describe this possibility. Physics tells you it's almost inevitable if a civilization survives long enough. Let me show you why. Suppose our civilization keeps growing at roughly the same rate it has been. Energy consumption has grown historically at something like 1 to 3% per year. That sounds modest. It sounds like nothing. But here's what's deceptive about exponential growth. Most people have never really felt it in their bones. Let me help you feel it. At just 2.5% growth per year, our energy consumption doubles every 28 years. In 1,000 years, which is nothing, cosmically speaking, 1,000 years is the blink of an eye. In 1,000 years at that rate, we would need to be consuming energy at the level of a Type 2 civilization. We would need to be harnessing the entire output of the sun. Think about that. 1,000 years. The Roman Empire was 1,000 years ago. Genghis Khan was 1,000 years ago. These feel like ancient history to us. But to the universe, 1,000 years is less than a rounding error. And in that time, if we simply continue on the trajectory we're already on, we need to harness an entire star. Now, here's the problem, the real problem, the one I want you to sit with. A civilization that captures all the energy of its star. What does it do with that energy? It uses it. It runs machines with it, powers cities, drives computation, heats things, cools things, manufactures things, and here is something that no level of engineering cleverness can get around. It is written into the laws of thermodynamics, and the laws of thermodynamics are not negotiable. They are not suggestions. They have never once been violated in the entire history of experimental science. The second law of thermodynamics says that every time you use energy to do work, some fraction of it becomes waste heat. You cannot get around this. You cannot engineer around this. The most efficient engine physically conceivable, the Carnot engine, still produces waste heat. Waste heat is the universe's way of taxing you for existing. So every watt of power a civilization uses eventually becomes heat that has to go somewhere. And where does it go? Into the environment, into the planet, into the atmosphere, into space eventually. But the rate at which it can escape into space is limited by a beautiful and simple law, the Stefan Boltzmann law. The amount of radiation a body can emit is proportional to its surface area and to the fourth power of its temperature. Fourth power. Remember that, it's important. Now here's the trap. Imagine you're a civilization on a planet. You're consuming energy. That energy becomes heat. The heat has to radiate away into space. As you consume more and more energy, more and more heat accumulates. And to radiate away more heat, your planet has to get hotter. Because radiation goes as the fourth power of temperature, you need to get quite a bit hotter to radiate just a little bit more. There is a temperature at which the situation stabilizes, where you're radiating heat away as fast as you're generating it. And that temperature, for a civilization consuming energy at the level we'll need in just a few centuries, is high enough to boil the oceans, high enough to melt rock, high enough to make the surface of your planet completely uninhabitable. This is not science fiction, this is thermodynamics. This is a calculation you can do on a piece of paper, with equations that have been checked 1,000,000 times in 1,000,000 different experiments. Let me put some numbers on it. The Earth's surface temperature right now is around 288 Kelvin. The amount of solar energy the Earth absorbs from the Sun is about 1.7 times 10 to the 17th watts. If our civilization's energy use continues growing, and if we're generating energy internally, not just redirecting solar energy but actually producing new energy, say from nuclear fusion, then we're adding heat to the Earth that didn't come from the Sun. And that heat has to go somewhere. At the current rate of growth, some estimates put us reaching a surface temperature increase of just from waste heat, not from greenhouse gases, not from burning fossil fuels, purely from the thermodynamic cost of existing as an advanced civilization, reaching catastrophic warming in somewhere between a few centuries and a few millennia. You see why this is interesting? Because it's not a problem of running out of fuel. It's not a problem of technology. It's a problem of heat. And you cannot solve a thermodynamics problem by wishing it away. Now, a clever person listening to this will say, wait a moment. Why don't they just move off the planet? Why don't they spread out into space? And yes, of course, that's exactly what they have to do. A civilization that solves this problem has to expand. It has to move into space, build structures around its star, spread out the heat sink across a larger and larger surface area. Freeman Dyson thought about exactly this in 1960. He imagined a civilization that, rather than living on a planet, dismantles its planets and builds a sphere, a Dyson sphere, around its entire star, capturing all of the star's light, running on stellar power, and radiating its waste heat, not from a small rocky planet, but from a huge shell surrounding the star at a much lower temperature, glowing in the infrared. This is not madness. This is engineering logic, driven to its conclusion by thermodynamics. If you want to use a lot of energy and you want to survive, you have to spread out your heat across a large surface, and the only surface large enough is the surface of a sphere around your star. But here's what I find most stunning about all of this. The energy problem isn't just a practical obstacle. It's almost a filter, a selection mechanism. A civilization that doesn't solve it, that doesn't figure out how to expand, how to manage its waste heat, how to stop cooking itself. That civilization has a ceiling, a hard physical ceiling, not political, not economic, not cultural, physical, built into the structure of the universe. And now I want to tell you something about the Fermi paradox, because this is where it all comes together. Enrico Fermi, brilliant man, I knew him a little. Fermi sat down at lunch one day and said, essentially, if the universe is so old and so vast, and if intelligent life can develop, then where is everybody? Why haven't we heard from anyone? Why is the universe so quiet? There are many proposed answers to this question. Maybe life is rare. Maybe the distances are too great. Maybe civilizations destroy themselves with weapons before they get far enough. But the thermodynamic argument adds something new to this conversation. Something physical and clean. It says every civilization everywhere in the universe faces the same energy reckoning, the same thermodynamic wall. You grow, you consume energy, you generate heat, and either you solve the expansion problem or you stop growing. And if you stop growing, you reach a kind of equilibrium, a steady state that may not be visible to us across interstellar distances. A civilization that has solved the energy problem looks to an outside observer like a slightly warm star. It emits infrared radiation at the temperature of its Dyson structure. That's it. No radio signals pouring out into space necessarily. No bright lights. Just a star that's a little bit warm in the wrong part of the spectrum. We've actually searched for these infrared surveys of galaxies looking for anomalously warm stars. So far, nothing definitive, but it's still early, and maybe the silence itself is telling us something. Maybe the energy problem is harder to solve than we think. Maybe the window between civilization that learns to use lots of energy and civilization that figures out how to survive using lots of energy is very narrow. Maybe many civilizations, perhaps most, hit that thermodynamic wall and can't get over it in time. Now, I want to step back for a moment, because I've been talking about physics, but I think there's something deeper here that I want you to feel. We sometimes talk about the laws of physics as constraints, as limitations. You can't go faster than light. You can't violate conservation of energy. You can't decrease total entropy. And it's tempting to feel frustrated by these, to feel like nature is being stingy, holding back all these possibilities. But I don't see it that way. I never have. I think the constraints are the most interesting part, because the constraints apply to everyone. They applied before we existed. They'll apply after we're gone. They apply on every planet, around every star in every galaxy in the observable universe. The laws of thermodynamics don't have exceptions for clever species. They don't care how smart you are. And so when I think about alien civilizations and the energy problem, what strikes me most isn't the danger of it. It's the universality of it. Somewhere out there, around some star I'll never see, some civilization of beings I can't even imagine, is running up against the same equations, staring at the same numbers, feeling the same pressure of exponential growth against the hard wall of thermodynamics. Physics connects us to them. Across distances so large the numbers have no meaning in everyday language. The same universe, the same rules, the same reckoning. That is, I think, one of the most remarkable things about being a physicist. You come to understand that the laws of nature are not parochial. They're not local. They're not human. They're the deepest thing we've found that is truly universal. And the energy problem, this beautiful, inescapable thermodynamic trap, it's written in those laws. For everyone. Everywhere. The next time you turn on a light, I want you to remember that you're participating in the same process that every civilization in the cosmos participates in. You're using energy. You're generating heat. And somewhere in the deep future, our descendants or our successors, whatever form they take, are going to have to reckon with where all that heat goes. That's not a depressing thought to me. It's a clarifying one, because it means the problem is real, it's physical, it's solvable in principle, and solving it requires exactly the kind of deep thinking that physics teaches you to do. Not intuition, not politics, not wishful thinking. Just the equations. The beautiful, merciless, universal equations.